Montana Territory, 1878. The promise of gold had withered like autumn leaves, leaving Blackwater Ridge a desperate town clinging to its last breaths of prosperity. Most men had moved on to more promising claims, but 24-year-old Adam Daniels remained, convinced there was nothing for him beyond these dusty streets. The town blacksmith by trade and a loner by choice, Adam had long ago accepted his fate. Men like him, men who felt things they shouldn't for other men, were destined for solitude. Better to be alone than swinging from the end of a rope. The anvil rang beneath Adam's hammer, each strike echoing his conviction. He'd built walls around himself thick as the mountains surrounding the valley, keeping everyone at arm's length. Safety lay in solitude, connection meant danger. The townsfolk respected his skill but whispered about his reclusiveness, calling him standoffish, peculiar. He'd heard the murmurs, they didn't bother him anymore, or at least that's what he told himself on the lonely nights when the blacksmith shop felt more like a prison than a sanctuary. Daniels. "Need these horseshoes by sundown," Sheriff Mills barked, dropping a set of worn shoes on the workbench. "Town meeting tonight, expect you'll be there." Adam nodded without meeting the sheriff's eyes. Town meetings meant crowds, prying questions, expectations of sociability he couldn't fulfill. "Yes, sir, shoes will be ready." The sheriff lingered, studying Adam with narrowed eyes. "You know, son, man your age ought to be looking for a wife, starting a family. Got some new folks moving in. Widow Jenkins has a daughter just arrived from back east." "Got all I need right here, Sheriff," Adam replied, gesturing to his forge. The lie came easily after years of practice. "Suit yourself." The sheriff shrugged and departed, leaving Adam to his thoughts. As the day progressed, Adam found himself glancing repeatedly toward the window. Word had spread that a cattle drive was passing through, bringing the usual commotion of cowboys and livestock. Such arrivals typically meant good business but unwelcome social obligations. He was hammering the last horseshoe when he heard it, shouts from the direction of the saloon growing louder by the second. "Hang the sodomite," a voice called out, followed by angry agreement. Adam's blood turned cold, his hammer froze mid-swing. He knew what that word meant, knew the penalty it carried. For a moment he considered barring his door, pretending he heard nothing, but something, curiosity or perhaps a buried kinship, drew him outside. A mob had formed in the street. At its center, a young man knelt in the dirt, blood streaming from his nose and split lip. His hands were bound behind him, his fine clothes torn and mudded. Despite his predicament, there was a quiet dignity in his posture, a refusal to cower that struck Adam to his core. "Caught him with letters," spat a burly cowhand, waving papers in the air. "Love letters to another man back in Denver, filthy perversion." Sheriff Mills pushed through the crowd, eyeing the kneeling stranger. "That true, boy?" The young man lifted his chin. "My private correspondence is not the business of strangers." "It's the business of decent folk when there's sin in our midst," roared someone from the crowd. "String him up." "Now hold on," the sheriff cautioned, though without much conviction. "We do things legal here." "The law's clear enough about his kind," shouted another voice. Adam stood frozen at the edge of the gathering, heart hammering harder than his anvil ever could. The stranger's eyes suddenly found his across the crowd, deep blue and unafraid even now. Something passed between them, a recognition that sent a jolt through Adam's body. "I'll handle this," announced the sheriff, hauling the young man to his feet. "Lock him up tonight, trial tomorrow." "Trial?" someone shouted. "What for?" "He's admitted his guilt." "I've admitted nothing," the stranger replied calmly, "except perhaps poor judgment in my choice of accommodations." The retort earned him a hard cuff to the ear from one of the men restraining him. Adam flinched as if he'd taken the blow himself. What happened next occurred with such swiftness that Adam would later struggle to recall the exact sequence. The prisoner twisted suddenly, breaking free from his captors. In the ensuing chaos, he darted toward the gap in the crowd where Adam stood. Without thinking, Adam stepped forward, creating a momentary barrier between the fleeing man and his pursuers. "This way," Adam hissed, gesturing toward his shop. The stranger didn't hesitate. Together they ducked into the blacksmith shop, Adam slamming the heavy door behind them and dropping the bar into place just as the first pursuers reached it. "Back door," Adam directed, already moving toward the rear of the building, "leads to the stables." "Why?" the stranger asked, even as he followed. "Why help me?" Adam had no answer, at least none he could articulate. Instead, he led the way through the shop, out the back, and into the stables where his horse waited. "Can you ride?" Adam asked, quickly saddling his bay mare. "Since before I could walk," the stranger confirmed, despite his bound hands. Adam cut the ropes with his knife, then helped the man mount before swinging up behind him. The pounding at the front of his shop grew more insistent. "They'll search here soon enough," Adam muttered, guiding the horse out the back of the stables and toward the tree line that marked the edge of town. "There's a hunting cabin up in the foothills. We can wait out the night there." The stranger nodded, seemingly content to place his life in Adam's hands. As they rode hard for the trees, Adam realized with startling clarity that he'd just upended his entire existence for a man whose name he didn't even know. "Aaron," the man said suddenly, as if reading his thoughts. "Aaron Reynolds." "Adam Daniels," he replied, guiding the horse deeper into the forest as the sounds of pursuit faded behind them. "And I believe I've just made myself as unwelcome in Blackwater as you are." "I'm sorry for that," Aaron said softly. "Don't be," Adam responded, surprising himself with the certainty in his voice. "I never much liked that town anyway." The cabin was little more than a weathered shack nestled against a rocky outcropping that shielded it from the worst of the mountain winds. Adam had built it 3 summers ago as a retreat from the suffocating closeness of town, a place where he could breathe freely without the weight of pretense. Now, as he kindled a small fire in the stone hearth, he felt strangely calm despite the circumstances. Aaron sat on the rough-hewn bench, examining his split lip in the reflection of a dented tin cup. In the flickering firelight, Adam could better assess his unexpected companion. Beneath the dirt and blood was a handsome face, refined but not soft, with intelligent eyes that missed nothing. His clothes, though soiled, were clearly of quality make, a gentleman, not a drifter. "You're bleeding again," Adam observed, retrieving a clean cloth and his canteen. He dampened the cloth and hesitantly offered it to Aaron, who accepted it with a nod of thanks. "Not the welcome I expected in Blackwater," Aaron commented dryly, dabbing at his wounds. "What brought you there? Not exactly on the way to anywhere." Aaron's expression darkened. "I was meeting someone. A friend who'd written that he'd found work at the mine." He glanced up at Adam. "I arrived only to discover he'd died in a collapse 2 weeks prior." "I'm sorry," Adam said, and meant it. "The Henderson collapse. 3 men lost." "James Henderson was Aaron paused, searching Adam's face before continuing, "my dearest friend since boyhood." The careful phrasing wasn't lost on Adam. He nodded, understanding the unspoken meaning. "And the letters they found." "From James, I kept them all," Aaron's voice caught. "Foolish sentiment that may cost me my life." Adam poked at the fire, watching the sparks rise. "They won't find us tonight. Come morning, we can figure our next move." Aaron questioned, eyebrow raised. "I just harbored a fugitive and fled town. I don't imagine my welcome would be any warmer than yours if we returned." Aaron studied him for a long moment. "Why did you help me? You don't know me. You had everything to lose." The question hung in the air between them. Adam turned it over in his mind, searching for an answer that wouldn't reveal too much. But in this cabin, miles from judgment, something in him cracked open. "I know what it's like," he said finally, voice low, "to be different, to know that if people saw the truth they'd—" He trailed off, unable to finish. Understanding dawned in Aaron's eyes. "How long have you been hiding?" "All my life. Figured it was just the way things had to be." Adam shrugged, the gesture failing to convey the weight of years spent in solitude. "It doesn't have to be," Aaron said quietly. "There are places, people who—" He stopped, a shadow crossing his face. "Or at least I thought there were. James wrote that we could make a life here. That Blackwater was small enough, remote enough that 2 bachelors sharing quarters wouldn't raise eyebrows." "He was wrong about that," Adam said grimly. "This town sees too little excitement not to notice 2 men living together." They fell silent then, each lost in thought as the fire crackled between them. Adam prepared a simple meal from the stores he kept at the cabin, and they ate without much talk. The single narrow cot presented an awkward challenge as night deepened. "Take the bed," Adam offered. "I'll use my bedroll by the fire." "Nonsense," Aaron countered. "You've sacrificed enough on my account. I'm accustomed to rougher accommodations than you might think." After some back and forth, exhaustion made the decision for them. The cot was just wide enough for two men to lie side by side, backs touching, each acutely aware of the other's presence but careful to maintain the fragile boundary between them. Adam lay awake long after Aaron's breathing had deepened into sleep, his mind racing. He had acted on impulse, risking everything for a stranger, yet it didn't feel like a mistake. For the first time in years, the crushing loneliness had lifted, replaced by something dangerous but exhilarating. He'd glimpsed a possibility he'd never allowed himself to imagine, that he wasn't alone in the world, that there were others like him. Dawn arrived with the sound of birds and the soft golden light filtering through the single window. Adam woke to find himself alone in the cot, a moment of panic seizing him before he spotted Aaron outside through the window, washing at the small stream beside the cabin. When Aaron returned, his face freshly scrubbed and his demeanor resolute, he laid out his proposal. "I have some money saved, enough to get us to California, San Francisco specifically." "California," Adam repeated, surprised. James had a cousin there. He wrote about communities where men like us, where we might find some measure of acceptance or at least less scrutiny. Aaron's eyes searched Adam's. "I know it's presumptuous to suggest you uproot your life, but there's nothing for either of us in Blackwater now." Adam considered the offer. His entire life had been centered around staying put, being invisible, surviving through isolation. The thought of journeying halfway across the country with a man he barely knew was terrifying, and yet strangely liberating. "I'd need to sell my shop," he said slowly. "Or what's left of it after the mob gets through." Hope flickered across Aaron's face. "You're considering it." "What choice do I have?" Adam asked, but there was no bitterness in his tone. "Besides, I've never seen the ocean." They remained at the cabin for 3 days, laying low while formulating their plan. Adam knew they couldn't simply ride back into Blackwater, but he had a contact, an old trapper named Ephraim who came to town monthly for supplies, who might be willing to negotiate the sale of his shop and tools. On the 4th day, they spotted Ephraim's wagon making its way along the valley road. Adam intercepted him, explaining his situation in careful terms that revealed enough but not too much. The old man listened without judgment, agreeing to act as intermediary. "Always figured you for a wandering soul just waiting for the right moment," Ephraim commented, surprising Adam. "You've got that look in your eye now, like you found something worth chasing." A week later, Ephraim returned with news. The sheriff had been making inquiries, but interest in the hunt had waned without fresh leads. More importantly, he'd found a buyer for Adam's shop and equipment, a smithy from the next town over who'd been looking to expand. The sum offered was fair, enough to finance their journey west with some to spare. As they prepared to depart, loading their provisions onto 2 horses Ephraim had brought from town, Adam found himself repeatedly glancing at Aaron. Over their days together, they had fallen into an easy companionship, learning each other's habits and histories. Aaron spoke of his childhood in Boston, his education, his dreams of finding a place where he could live truthfully. Adam shared less readily, but still more than he ever had with another soul, about his father teaching him smithing, about recognizing his own nature as a boy of 15, about the loneliness that had been his constant companion. What remained unspoken between them was the nature of their relationship now. They were allies in escape, certainly, but the lingering glances and casual touches that had become more frequent suggested something deeper forming. Neither man seemed ready to name it, as if doing so might tempt fate. Their journey began in earnest the following morning, heading west toward the territories that would eventually lead them to California. They avoided towns where possible, camping under stars that seemed to multiply the farther they traveled from civilization. Around campfires, their conversations deepened, revealing more of themselves with each passing mile. "Do you ever regret it?" Aaron asked one night, a month into their journey. They had stopped in a secluded valley, their horses grazing nearby. "Being the way we are." Adam considered the question seriously. Used to, not because it felt wrong, but because it seemed like a sentence to a lifetime alone. He poked at the fire, watching embers rise toward the canopy of stars. "I made peace with that, or thought I had." And now, Aaron's voice was soft, hesitant. Adam looked up, meeting Aaron's gaze across the flames. "Now I'm beginning to think there might be another way to live." The tension between them, building since that first night in the cabin, crackled like the fire. Aaron moved around to Adam's side, settling beside him on the fallen log they dragged near their camp. "May I?" Aaron asked, his hand hovering near Adam's. Adam nodded, words failing him as their fingers intertwined. The simple contact sent a current through his body, both terrifying and exhilarating. When Aaron leaned forward, Adam met him halfway, their lips meeting in a kiss that felt like coming home after a lifetime of wandering. That night marked a transformation, the walls Adam had built around his heart crumbling beneath Aaron's gentle persistence. They spoke of the future now not as a vague hope but as something tangible they were building together, mile by hard-won mile. Their journey was not without challenges. Near the Utah Territory, they encountered a group of riders who eyed them with suspicious scrutiny. Only their well-practiced story, two cousins traveling to claim an inheritance from a deceased uncle in California, saved them from more pointed questioning. As they traversed the Sierra Nevada, winter threatened to close the mountain passes. They pushed harder, their supplies dwindling, both men and horses growing lean with the effort. The first glimpse of the Sacramento Valley below them, lush and green compared to the snow-covered peaks they'd crossed, brought tears to Adam's eyes, tears of relief, exhaustion, and something like hope. They reached San Francisco in early spring of 1879, the city sprawling before them in a chaos of activity, unlike anything Adam had ever seen. Ships crowded the harbor, men of all nationalities filled the streets, and the air hummed with possibility. James's cousin, a merchant named William Foster, received them cautiously at first, clearly assessing whether they could be trusted. But once satisfied that their connection to James was genuine, he welcomed them into his home, a handsome residence in a respectable neighborhood where he lived alone. "James wrote to me about you," William told Aaron one evening when Adam had retired early, exhausted from a day exploring potential locations for a new smithy. "He cared for you deeply." "As I for him," Aaron replied quietly. William nodded, understanding in his eyes. "There are others here, you know, men who share your inclinations. We've formed a sort of society, private but supportive, a community." "Is it safe?" Aaron asked, the caution of a lifetime not easily discarded. "Safer than most places. The city has its own code, minds one's business if properly incentivized." William smiled slightly. "And there's something about this place, the fog perhaps, that obscures what people don't wish to see clearly." In the weeks that followed, Adam and Aaron began building their new life. With William's connections, they found a modest house on the city's outskirts, far enough from the bustle for privacy, but close enough for Adam to establish a smithy that quickly gained recognition for quality work. Aaron, with his education and refined manners, secured a position as a clerk in a shipping office owned by one of William's associates. To the outside world, they presented themselves as longtime friends sharing accommodations for economy's sake, a common enough arrangement in a city where housing came at a premium. Behind closed doors, they discovered the joy of building a home together, of falling asleep and waking in each other's arms, of small domestic rituals that bound them more tightly than any official ceremony could have. Through William, they were cautiously introduced to others, couples who lived as they did, navigating a world that would condemn them if it knew the truth. These friendships became a lifeline, proof that they were not alone, that what they felt was not unique in its wrongness but in its rarity and resilience. Not every day was easy. Adam sometimes woke from nightmares of Blackwater, of angry mobs and hangman's nooses. Aaron occasionally fell into melancholy, mourning James and the life they might have shared. But increasingly, these shadows were outnumbered by days of contentment, even joy. 2 years after their arrival in San Francisco, Adam completed his masterwork, an elaborate iron gate commissioned for one of the city's wealthiest merchants. The design, intricate vines intertwining to form a protective barrier that was both strong and beautiful, seemed to Adam a reflection of what he and Aaron had created together. The evening of the installation, they celebrated alone at home, a bottle of good whiskey between them as they sat on the small porch overlooking the garden Aaron had painstakingly cultivated. "Do you ever think about Blackwater?" Aaron asked, his head resting against Adam's shoulder. "Less and less," Adam admitted, "though I sometimes wonder what became of my shop." "Do you regret leaving?" Adam considered this, watching the fog roll in from the bay, shrouding the garden in a soft, protective haze. How could I? It led me here to this. He gestured broadly, encompassing their home, their life, but his eyes settled on Aaron, to you. Aaron smiled, the same quiet dignity in his expression that had first caught Adam's attention in that Blackwater street, now softened by years of safety and love. When I was kneeling in that street, certain I was about to die, I never imagined I would one day be grateful for that moment. Grateful? Adam questioned, eyebrow raised. It brought me to you, Aaron said simply. And you gave me a place to belong when I had none. Adam leaned forward, pressing his forehead against Aaron's. We gave that to each other. As night deepened around them, the fog enveloping their home in its protective embrace, Adam reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From a place of solitude and fear to this haven they had built together, from a belief that men like them were destined for loneliness to the certainty that love, even forbidden love, could create something permanent and true. In the distance, the sounds of the city continued, ships' horns, distant music, the ever-present murmur of commerce and life. But here, in this small corner they had claimed for themselves, there was only peace, acceptance, and the profound knowledge that whatever trials might come, they would face them together. For Adam Daniels, who had once believed safety lay only in isolation, this was the greatest revelation, that the heart could be both vulnerable and protected, that love, far from being a liability, was in fact the strongest forge in which a life of meaning could be hammered into existence.